The United States sent the most powerful navy on Earth to blockade Iran. At least 26 Iranian-linked ships still got through. There was no battle. They exposed the strategy behind the navy. Bases don't move. A runway has a fixed address. So does a fuel depot. So does a radar. So does a command post. Iran doesn't need to defeat the American military. All it needs to do is just to keep a short list of vital facilities under repeated threat. America has more firepower, that's true. Iran has the shorter target list. It was built to isolate enemies. It's creating connections. It was built to reassure allies. It's transferring danger to them. Pressure was supposed to make them hold. Instead, it turned them into a network. The United States sent the most powerful navy on Earth to blockade Iran. At least 26 Iranian-linked ships still got through. That doesn't mean 26 cargo ships defeated the American Navy. No, there was no battle. They exposed the strategy behind the Navy. America's pressure system works best when the target stands alone. Iran doesn't anymore. Moscow opens one door, Beijing opens another. Regional actors create pressure somewhere else. The blockade isn't leaking because the Navy is weak. It's leaking because the world around it has changed. Those 26 ships revealed 3 failures at once. The blockade is leaking. American bases in the Gulf have become pressure points, and every attempt to tighten the system risks widening and escalating the war. There was a deal in June. It broke. American strikes resumed. Today marks the 6th day of the US missile strikes upon Iran, and the blockade came back. Iran answered by striking bases and facilities used by American forces across the Gulf. Kuwait, Bahrain, Jordan, Qatar. Trump says the pressure continues until Tehran returns to the MOU, which got shattered by Trump's actions, not Iran's. So, is the pressure producing surrender? It's producing something, just not that. The blockade began April 13th. Central Command says it has stopped 85 vessels and seized 3. Lloyd's List is a maritime intelligence service. Shipping companies pay it to know where cargo goes. Across the whole blockade, it counts at least 26 that got through. Not in one day, of course, over months. 1 ship is luck. 2 ships is maybe coincidence. 5 ships, maybe some more luck. 26 is a repetition. Repetition means a route. A route means buyers, financing, insurance, recurring gaps in enforcement, information reaching the right captains. You can't sink a business model without starting a much larger war. Even if Washington's estimate of $500 million a day is accurate, economic damage isn't the political outcome it wanted. Judge the operation against what it was designed to achieve. Aaron David Miller served under 6 U.S. Secretaries of State. His verdict was simple. Washington lost the thread. This war started to stop a bomb. 5 months later, nobody's talking about the bomb anymore. They forgot about that. They're fighting over a strait that was open before the war began in the first place. The official story also began breaking down on land. The Washington Post identified at least 228 damaged or destroyed structures and pieces of equipment across sites used by American forces. The Post also reported that access to some current commercial imagery was delayed or restricted, making the latest damage harder for the public to verify. Bases don't move. A runway has a fixed address. So does a fuel depot. So does a radar. So does a command post. Iran doesn't need to defeat the American military. All it needs to do is just to keep a short list of vital facilities under repeated threat. America has more firepower, that's true. Iran has the shorter target list. Now look at who lives next to them. For decades, the bargain was simple. You host American power and America lowers your risk. That bargain is beginning to reverse. Some Gulf governments reportedly restricted the use of their territory or airspace for attacks on Iran. That's in a Congressional Research Service report written by American lawmakers. They were struck anyway. Iranian missiles landed in Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, Jordan, and Oman. That makes the alliance problem worse, not better. If helping Washington doesn't guarantee safety and refusing Washington doesn't guarantee safety, the alliance begins losing its value as insurance. The UAE saw this coming years ago. It built a pipeline to Fujairah as an escape route around the Strait of Hormuz. The pipeline was meant to keep oil moving if Hormuz became unsafe. Fujairah is just 1/20th of the throughput capacity of Hormuz. Still, it has faced repeated drone attacks since March. The bypass developed a bypass problem. Nobody in the Gulf is switching sides. It looks like this: airspace closed for certain missions, a quiet refusal to support a particular strike, more conditions on missions launched from American bases, more talks with Tehran, more mediation through Islamabad, Ankara, Beijing. America can keep every base and still lose the freedom to use them. That's how an empire remains physically present while becoming strategically constrained. If you want the map instead of the noise, subscribe. That's the whole channel. Now, the strongest objection. Carnegie published it in March under a blunt title: Why are China and Russia not rushing to help Iran? Russia and China have not formally joined Iran's war. No Russian pilots, no Chinese fleet, no mutual defense treaty. Iran's supreme leader was killed on the first day and nobody came. That's true, and it may be exactly why the arrangement is so hard to stop. American officials told the Washington Post that Moscow provided Iran with operational information concerning American warships and aircraft. Chinese firms have reportedly supplied dual use components or commercial support. Washington has sanctioned companies over alleged assistance. Russia and China blocked the UN resolution on Hormuz together. Nobody carries the whole burden. Nobody has to send soldiers to die for anyone else. A formal alliance would give Washington identifiable pressure points: a treaty, a command structure, obligations, governments, and political constituencies that can be squeezed. This network has no headquarters, no single treaty, no central command, no one member whose departure collapses the whole system. There is no formal structure to break because nobody built a formal framework. The network emerges from overlapping interests. It isn't a conventional military alliance. It's a survival network. America still has more power than any single member of it, but America has to spend power in several places at once. Each opponent only has to survive in its own region. America's biggest weakness isn't that it lacks power, it's that it has to spend that power everywhere, all at once. It was built to isolate enemies. It's creating connections. It was built to reassure allies. It's transferring danger to them. It was built to force negotiations. It's teaching adversaries that negotiation may be a trap. It was built to prevent nuclear weapons. It may be making nuclear deterrence look necessary. Every setting is delivering the opposite result. The machine is running in reverse, backwards. And nobody switches it off because nobody has another machine. We've seen a leaking pressure system before. The mechanics are different. The trap is still the same. Napoleon couldn't defeat the British Navy, so in 1806 he tried to blockade British trade instead. It leaked within months. Smuggling paid too well. His own allies resented the cost. Portugal resisted, and enforcement dragged Napoleon into Iberian War. That bled France for 6 years. Then Russian Empire stopped enforcing the system as well. Napoleon later invaded Russia with 600,000 men to force compliance. He never fixed the blockade. He destroyed his army trying to enforce it. The system built to isolate Britain helped build the coalition that defeated him instead. The point isn't that Trump is Napoleon. The point is that leaking pressure systems create demands for wider enforcement. When coercion fails, governments almost never admit the theory was wrong. They add more pressure. More ships stopped. More targets hit. More infrastructure moved onto the target list. Trump has been bombing Iranian bridges and power plants for 6 days in a row now. Iran has answered in kind by hitting vital infrastructure components across the Gulf. We will talk about this in our next segment. A base, a port, an oil terminal, civilian life support facilities, a neighboring country, Yemen and the Red Sea create another escalation corridor. One unclear strike can trigger several retaliations. Participants may disagree about responsibility. Each side then concludes the previous level of force was insufficient. The danger isn't that someone wakes up and chooses World War III. The danger is that every smaller move begins to look necessary. Wars like this don't begin with one insane decision. They expand through a chain of smaller decisions that each look reasonable at the time. Every medium sized country is watching this and running the same math. Iran accepted negotiated limits and remained vulnerable to attack. Libya surrendered its nuclear program and was later destroyed. North Korea, however, built a nuclear deterrent and is treated far more carefully. You don't have to approve of that lesson, you only need to recognize it. Modern diplomacy lessons are that written agreements can be abandoned. Somebody signs, somebody walks away, and the paper cannot enforce itself. Physical deterrence has to be calculated into every decision anyone makes about you. I'm not saying Iran will test a weapon tomorrow. I don't know that. What this war has done is strengthen every voice in Tehran arguing that negotiation without a deterrent the other side cannot ignore is national suicide. America may win individual strikes while losing the global argument against nuclear proliferation. That consequence would outlive every ship, every base, and every government involved in this war. The blockade continues to leak. Washington widens enforcement. That raises the risk of stopping ships connected to countries America still needs. Gulf governments place tighter conditions on American operations. Russia and China give Iran enough support to survive, but not enough to enter the war openly. Iran waits. Every additional week raises Washington's costs and strengthens Tehran's bargaining position. Another agreement may eventually emerge. It won't restore the old order. It'll put into writing how much the old order has already changed. Go back to the 26 ships I started off with. They didn't defeat the American Navy. No, they exposed the crack. America built its power by isolating enemies one at a time. Then it pressured several of them at once. But this taught them to keep one another alive. Pressure was supposed to make them fold. Instead, it turned them into a network.